Buckle up, I got a lot to say.
Seatbelts, everyone!
Yesterday, I reread, mind you, I've read this before years ago, did not enjoy, or I did more at the time. Now I'm more of a critical reader, but I read Verity and made notes on it for you guys from 10 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. yesterday. So I have 30 pages of notes. I have a lot to say. This will be a long video. This will be spoiler filled, and this is a rant review. So this is not for the author or the author's fans. Don't send any hate their way. Don't send hate my way. These are just my opinions, and unfortunately, I have a lot of negative ones. So let's dive into this review of Verity by Colleen Hoover. Okay, to begin, I guess we probably want a vague description of what Verity is about. I'm going to read you guys the synopsis from Goodreads so you get an idea of what the book is about, but then we will go into my full review and thoughts. Lone Ashley is a struggling writer on the brink of financial ruin when she accepts the job offer of a lifetime. Jeremy Crawford, husband of best-selling author Verity Crawford, has hired Lowen to complete the remaining books in a successful series his injured wife is unable to finish. Lowen arrives at the Crawford home ready to sort through years of Verity's notes and outlines, hoping to find enough material to get her started. What Lowen doesn't expect to uncover in the chaotic office is an unfinished autobiography Verity never intended for anyone to read. Page after page of bone-chilling admissions, including Verity's recollection of the night her family was forever altered. Lowen decides to keep the manuscript hidden from Jeremy, knowing its contents could devastate the already grieving father, but as Lowen's feelings for Jeremy begin to intensify, she recognizes all the ways she could benefit if he were to read his wife's words. After all, no matter how devoted Jeremy is to his injured wife, a truth this horrifying could make it impossible for him to continue loving her. And trust me, that is what she wants. She wants him to stop loving her. My cats are being menaces back there, so I'm sorry if you hear them playing. So, I'm going to be doing a chapter by chapter breakdown, reading you some parts, summarizing some parts, and giving my thoughts. So let's dive in. I do want to preface this saying this is the first Colleen Hoover book I ever read. I enjoyed this at the time. Um, I still think it's probably Colleen Hoover's best book, but it's now that I read more critically, it's not very good, guys. Just putting that out there in the beginning. This is not going to be very positive, but that's what I'm here for, to gossip and rant about bad books and sometimes good books. Okay, to begin, the book opens with a man getting run over right in front of her and the tire of the truck popping his head off, all because he crossed the street while looking at his phone. This happens right in front of our main character, Lowen, as she's heading to a meeting. And when it happens, she notices that no one blinks an eye. They just all keep walking. Maybe there's a few gasps, but that's exactly why she moved to the city 10 years ago, because there are people there with far more pitiful stories than her. So what's her sad backstory? We'll find out. She says, "Here I'm invisible, unimportant. Manhattan is too crowded to give a shit about me, and I love her for it." So I guess she just wants to be invisible, is her whole thing. I get it. As I'm putting myself on camera and on YouTube, hoping people watch me, but I actually get it. Okay, anyway, so that happens, and then a man behind her asks her if she's hurt, and she tells him it's not her blood, it's that dead man right there. So he leads her into a coffee shop to help her get cleaned up in their bathroom. While they're in the bathroom, she thinks, "The tanginess in the air sends my mind whirling back to when I was 10. The smell of blood was strong enough to remember it all these years later." So again, we're alluding to something bad, something really bad happening in her past. In the bathroom, the guy that's helping her out so chivalrously offers her his shirt since hers is covered in blood, and he says, "It's okay. I've seen worse." So she asks, "Oh, are you a doctor if you've seen worse?" And he says, "No, he used to be in real estate." And she is already just immensely attracted to this man. She goes, "His eyes match the tie he just shoved in his pocket. Chartreuse. He's handsome, but there's something about him that makes me think he wishes he weren't. Almost as if his looks might be an inconvenience to him. Part of him he doesn't want anyone to notice. He wants to be invisible in the city, just like me." That's her first thought. Also, we don't find that to be true later in the book. I wouldn't say it's like untrue, but it's not really like a key part of his personality that he wants to be invisible, like it is for Lowen. So they then introduce themselves. Her name is Lowen, as I mentioned, but I've literally never heard that name before. No offense if your name is Lowen, but like, his name is Jeremy. Jeremy. Never date a man with a name starting with J. Red flag. She then asks him, "Oh, what happened to you that's worse than the accident we just saw where this guy's head popped off?" And he's just so casually is like, "Yeah, I pulled my 8-year-old daughter's body out of a lake 5 months ago." And then he goes, "What about you?" He asks. He leans against the counter like this is a conversation he's ready for, a conversation he's been waiting for. Someone to come along and make his tragedy seem less tragic. It's what you do when you've experienced the worst of the worst. You seek out people like you, people worse off than you, and you use them to make yourself feel better about the terrible things that have happened to you. I guess, but really, we're just trauma dumping.
I had a very traumatic childhood.
We find out that what happened to her was that her mom died from cancer the week before, and she was caring for her the past year. This is something that really bugs me in Colleen Hoover's books. She and I have notes here if you see me looking down. I'm referring to my notes. Her characters have always just been through something terrible and or they are grieving something or someone, and then the two love interests upon their first meeting trauma dump to each other. We see this in It ends with us when Lily tells Ryle that her dad just died and he tells her he just lost a patient, or even in Ugly Love, where Miles uses his tragic past as rationale for his cruel behavior and the girl's just expected to deal with it. I mean, like, God forbid a man gets therapy. Oh, this is a movie that's coming out. Reminders of Him, where upon meeting her love interest for the first time, she reveals alcohol related problems by ordering a drink from his bar, but not drinking it as a form of control to prove to herself that she can walk away from alcohol. Yeah, I could go on and on and on. Every one of Colleen Hoover's books opens with the two love interests trauma dumping to each other. It's a common plot device for her, and it's never handled well. I think she does it for shock and plot development rather than like slowly revealing the character's past and handling them with sensitivity and depth. But I digress. Let's move on with the story. After trauma dumping to each other, they leave the coffee shop and she stops to give a statement to the cops. And that's chapter one. Chapter two, Lowen remembering the night before where she was at her desk when she sees an ant fluttering. She says the ant was alone, fluttering left and right, up and down, searching for food or friends. Okay, this is super nitpicky, I know. Um, this implies that the ant has wings, and yes, there are ants with wings, but she basically is talking about it like it's a regular ant, but it's fluttering around. Anyway, I mean, that's nitpicky. I just don't think that's the word I would have used, but she also does spend a whole entire page on low and observing this aunt and like making a comparison between her and the aunt, like not knowing where to go, searching for food, friends, feeling lonely. It's really silly, honestly. And then we learn that her and her literary agent, because she's an author of what genre, I don't know. I don't know. By the end, I kind of assume, but they never really say. But yeah, her and her literary agent used to hook up. This doesn't really go anywhere, honestly. Kind of pointless to have in the book. But it's the night before, and he texts her that she needs to come to a meeting at their publishing house the next day. She's all hurt because they used to hook up, and he doesn't even ask about her mom, how her mom is doing when she just died a week ago. And she notes that his lack of concern is part of the reason they broke up, which is kind of crazy because we do see him have concern for her later on. So it's like make up make up your mind about who this character is. We then learn as she's like thinking back on her past that her mom was terrified of her and kept her pretty secluded because she would sleepwalk. That's all we get. We don't get any information of what happens when she sleepwalk. We just get that her mom kept her secluded because she sleptwalk, whatever that means. So that was the night before. She was just thinking about it, but while she waits for this meeting at the publishing house to start, apparently it's about a possible job offer. And when she's waiting, she hears someone behind her say, "Nice shirt." And lo and behold, it's Jeremy, the guy that gave her the shirt and helped her clean up. And she thinks, oh gosh, I hope my meeting has nothing to do with him. But of course it does. They both have a meeting on the fourth floor. They take the elevator together to the fourth floor, but then split up at the top, even though they're both going into the same meeting. But Corey, her literary agent, sees her and is shocked that she is early. He told her the meeting is at 9 when it's really at 9:30 in case she was late as usual. And she's mad because she's like, I wouldn't have witnessed that accident if you had given me the real time of the meeting. Well, I think she doesn't say this out loud. She just thinks it to herself. But personally, I don't blame him. I've dealt with people who are always late to everything, and I would have done the same thing. I would have said, "Oh, it starts at 9:30," or it starts at 9 when it really starts at 9:30. But also, this is what we're learning about Lone, right? That she's always late to everything. This never comes up again, ever. She's never late to anything else in the future. So I don't know why we even included that. They start heading into the conference room, and Corey asks how her mom is. And she's like, well, she died last week. And he's like, why didn't you tell me? And she's like, why didn't you ask? And we learned that her mom had stage 4 colon cancer and was on hospice for 3 months before she died, and Lone cared for her the whole time and didn't leave her place for weeks since her mom got really bad, and so she just got everything they needed delivered to the house. She says, and I actually like this line, funny how one of the most populated cities in the world can double as a paradise for agoraphobics. And you know what? As someone who lives in LA and struggles a little bit recently with agoraphobia, the big city does have its benefits. You really can just get like everything delivered to you. I mean, I still go out. I force myself to, but anyway, she's actually happy her mom died because apparently she only ever brought guilt into her life. And her mom also left her in debt because she told Lowen that she had money to leave for her after she died if she cared for her. So Lowen gets an expensive 2-bedroom apartment because the mom insists on having like her own room. Her mom didn't actually leave any money for her, and she's in debt because of this apartment. So yeah, her mom left her broke. Corey tells her then that her books do okay, but since she doesn't do any marketing on social media or anything, her sales just aren't cutting it. And they don't know what the publishing house Pantom is offering because they have to sign an NDA before they learn more, but hopefully it pays a lot of money because of all the secrecy. So he's like, you need to take the deal that they give you, basically, because you need money. You're broke. We're broke. Then we dive a little bit more into how their relationship went when they used to hook up. And she says, the reason our actual relationship was so short lived is because he was in love with another woman. Never mind that the other woman in our relationship was also me. He fell in love with the female protagonist of my first novel open ended before he ever spoke to me. He assumed my character's personality was a close reflection of my own, when in fact, I couldn't be more than opposite from her. That's why they didn't work out, I guess. So, yeah, they started hooking up pretty much right when they met, but broke up because she is not like the character in her book. In the moment, he makes fun of her shirt and she thinks, such an ass, but he's good in bed like most assholes. And I don't know if I would agree with that. I feel like most assholes are really selfish in bed, but maybe she's only ever dated assholes, so that's all she has to base it off of. So they get into the meeting and they find out that they want Lowen to finish slash co-write Verity Crawford, Jeremy's wife, her last 3 books, and do book tours and press releases all for the book. And Lowen doesn't want to do all that. She doesn't like doing press. She likes being very invisible. As we've established, Jeremy is offering $75,000 per book, and all the royalties from the sales of the books will still go to Verity, which apparently she's like a famous, super famous author, so this is kind of a bad deal, honestly. And they also want the first book within 6 months, which is really fast, so she's gonna decline. But Jeremy asks to speak with her alone. Everyone else leaves the room, and she just notices how he's so tall and she is so small next to him. And I am exhausted of these extreme height differences in books where the man always has to be like big and 6'7" and the woman's like 5'2", and I know it's dumb, like, I know it's nitpicky again, but, like, why does the short girl always require a man that's at least 6'2" in, like, every romance novel I've ever read? Can we get a tall female love interest for once? Like, as a girl who is 5'10" and boyfriend 6'1", that height difference is a lot easier, I feel like, than always breaking your neck, leaning down to even just kiss your partner. I don't know. I know it's not like super focused on in this book, but it just bugs me. I know it's nitpicky, and I don't know, maybe it's just tall girl problems, but aren't you guys sick of breaking your necks just to kiss? Like, why do we have to be like a foot apart in distance? Anyway, Jeremy tells her that Verity can't finish the books because she was in a car accident, and they reached out to her because Open Ended was one of Verity's favorite books. And then he asks her, have you ever heard of people referred to as chronics? She shakes her head. He says, I think Verity might have made up the term. After our daughters died, she said we were chronics, prone to chronic tragedy, one terrible thing after another. And Lone relates, she says her neighbor where she grew up lost his son in combat, then his wife from cancer, and then his daughter in a car accident. So he must have been a chronic too. Jeremy asks where he is now, and she lies and says that he's remarried with kids and grandkids when really he offed himself. So she asks about daughters because she only heard of the one daughter dying, and he says, yeah, twins. We lost Chasten. That's how I was when I read this. I was like, Chasten? Okay. We lost Chasten 6 months before Harper passed. He isn't detaching himself from his emotions as well as he was earlier. He runs a hand down his face and then returns to his chair. Some families are lucky enough to never experience a single tragedy, but then there are those families that seem to have tragedies right waiting on the back burner. What can go wrong goes wrong, then gets worse. So very sad. He's experienced a lot of loss and grief, but he really wants Lowen to finish Verity's book series. Before she even agrees, he says, you'll need to spend time in Verity's office going through her things. She has years of notes and outlines, stuff I wouldn't know how to make sense of. She shakes her head. Did you not hear anything I said? Jeremy, I told you I can't. The lawyer is lowballing you. Tell your agent to ask for 500,000. Tell them you'll do no press, under a pen name, and with an ironclad non-disclosure. That way, whatever it is you are trying to hide can stay hidden." And she's like, "Oh, okay." And then he tells her that she is welcome to come and stay with them for however long it takes for her to go through Verity's office and like make sense of her notes and stuff. So that's the end of chapter 2. Chapter 3 opens with her letting us know that she had a boyfriend in her early 20s who liked to be choked, and they broke up because she wouldn't choke him. And she says, "In your early 20s, vanilla should satisfy a person without the need to introduce fetishes so early on in a relationship." First of all, why this is specific on whether or not you're in your early 20s is kind of weird. So if you've been I've been just to put it in perspective, I'm not going to say what kind of stuff goes on in that area for me, but I have been in a relationship with my boyfriend for 6 years since I was 19. And or a week before I turned 19, it was just our anniversary on Halloween, and I turned 25 in 4 days. To put that in perspective. So that's 6 years. I'm still in my early 20s, and I have from her point of view, her opinion is that this whole time I should have been having vanilla sex and fine with that. Okay. Okay. Okay, this is kind of weird because, like, why are you policing what people are into? She doesn't have to be into the choking. That's fine. That's a completely valid reason to break up. But saying people in their early 20s should only partake in vanilla sex is just such a weird take. It doesn't even make sense to me. But wait, it gets worse. She leaves the meeting with Corey and goes back to her apartment with him for some reason, and she finds an eviction notice on her door and thinks, "It could be worse. I could still be with Amos," which is the guy that liked being choked. Is that really worse? Like, him liking being choked and being with him is worse than being evicted? Um, what? First of all, liking being choked is like one of the most tame kinks you can have. So much so that I looked this up, and a US study done in 2021 found that over half of women, 58%, and over a quarter of men, 26%, experience being choked during sex at some point in their lives. This is referred to as breath play, as it is so common. But no, apparently, to Lowen, it is worse than being evicted from her apartment. I don't really get this. I feel like, I mean, as long as everyone's consenting and we're doing it safely, it's really like not that weird. Honestly, guys, like, I don't know. Enough about that though. It just really threw me off when I read that. I was like, what? Anyway, Lowen sees the eviction notice with Corey, tells him, "It's okay, I got a storage unit and I'll be heading to Jeremy's to go over Verity's stuffs and notes soon," so she's really not stressing too much over being evicted. But Corey is shocked that she's gonna be staying at Jeremy's house. He, he's like, he just lost his daughter, his 2 daughters, and his wife was in a car wreck. And he's not all that comfortable with Owen staying there because he's suggesting that maybe Jeremy has something to do with it. But Owen's already looked into how they died, and the first daughter died of an allergic reaction at a friend's house, and the second drowned in the lake behind their home. And Jeremy wasn't present for either incident, so she thinks he's fine. He's in the clear. Corey concedes. He just warns her to at least make her stay as quick as possible. Will we do that? We'll see. That's the end of chapter 3. So, chapter 4 opens with Lowen driving to Jeremy's house, and she's thinking, could have done anything during this drive, like listen to Bohemian Rhapsody over 60 times, but instead she listens to the audiobook for Verity's first novel. Like, why are we acting like reading Verity's first novel is less preferable than listening to Bohemian Rhapsody over 60 times in a row? I love that song, but 60 times in a row sounds like torture. She thinks listening to Verity's first book will be worse. I don't really get that because as her like now co-writer, shouldn't she be familiarizing herself with Verity's books like as fast as she can, especially because she has to write the first one within 6 months. But anyway, she listens to the book and she's intimidated by how good it is. She's just thinking about how Jeremy never clarified the extent of Verity's injuries, so she doesn't know if she'll be able to communicate with her or not. And she hopes that Verity's series won't propel her into fame, which I found a little confusing because their whole agreement was she'll write under a pen name, she won't have to do any press. So, like, why is she worried about this propelling her into fame? I don't know. And she thinks, because we cannot leave Amos alone yet, she thinks, this is my life, sort of homeless, living out of a suitcase. Just 1.5 weeks after the last of my immediate family members passes away. Can it get worse? I could be married to Amos right now, so life could always be worse. The poor guy just liked being joked. But apparently that's worse than being homeless. This poor guy. He's just catching all the strays in this book, and we don't even ever meet him. She gets to the house. It's all gray with a blood red door. It's never mentioned again. It's just supposed to be kind of ominous, I guess. But the house is huge, worth over $3 million. Blah blah blah. They're rich. She's about to get out of her car to head inside when she sees a child staring into her window, which scares the crap out of her. And but she notes that he's a miniature version of Jeremy. So she follows him into the house and he shuts the door in her face. Valid. Honestly. Get away, stranger. Yeah, he shuts the door in her face and she says, I don't want to call him an asshole. He's a little kid and he's been through a lot, but I think he might be an asshole. And like, didn't we just establish that this poor kid just lost two sisters and his mom is like was just in a car accident? Like, can we not label him an asshole right away? Mind you, he's 5. He's like 5 years old and she's labeling him an asshole. Poor kid. So she knocks on the door. Jeremy answers and he's like, "Oh, crew was supposed to let you in." She's like, "Oh, well, slam the door in my face, but okay." She doesn't mention it. But anyway, Jeremy lets her in, lets her know that she's getting the master bedroom since they all sleep upstairs now. And when they go into the bedroom, she notices that the bed's headboard had teeth marks bitten into the top. And mind you, okay, they all stay upstairs now, right? Which is kind of weird considering what we will learn is that Verity is in a vegetative state, but they take her downstairs and stuff. They installed an elevator in their home so that they can take her downstairs and stuff. So why didn't they just put her in the master bedroom on the first floor? Seems easier than like installing a whole ass elevator into the house. I don't know, I just thought about that, but I'm like, what? Jeremy asks her, why are you crazy? Jeremy asks her what pen name she'll be using because he wants to introduce her to the nurse with that name. And I'm like confused at this part because so she is writing under a pen name, right? We've confirmed that now, like twice. So again, why is she worried about getting famous from this? Anyway, he helps her come up with a pen name by mixing the street she grew up on and her first pet's name. So it's going to be Laura Chase is her pen name, if you care. He shows her around a bit and then they go into Verity's room and Lone sees that she is very unresponsive, not moving, just laying in the bed. So then they go into Verity's office, which is just covered with stacks of paper and bookshelves. Tells her, that Verity would just write notes on everything. That's why there's so many like stray papers around. He says she once used a Sharpie to write down the character names on the bottom of Crue's diaper. We were at the zoo and she didn't have a notepad. Ew. I just want to say this book, it doesn't have like an established time period, but it's definitely modern day, and it's assumed to have been like around the time that the book was written, which was in 2018. So you're telling me that Verity was so desperate to get these character names down that she wrote them on her child's diaper, then I don't know, maybe like the notes app in her phone? I mean, I've even texted myself writing ideas before. Surely there is a better option than her child's diaper. What are the odds she has a Sharpie on her, but not a phone? So they're in the office and she says, I look at the shelves containing the series I'm taking over. There are to be 9 total books in the series, 6 have been published, and 3 are still to be delivered. The series title is The Noble Virtues, and each book is a different virtue. The 3 that are left up to me are courage, truth, and honor. So we finally get some idea of what this series is about, but still not like a genre. And but apparently all the books are from a villain's point of view, so maybe like thriller? I don't know. But anyway, Jeremy doesn't know either because he hasn't read any book of hers besides the first one because he didn't like being in her head. Husband of the year. He leaves her to her work. She starts rummaging through the office to find notes on the books, and she comes across something titled So Be It, which she seems to be like a personal journal instead of minding her business and just putting it aside. She flips to chapter 1, which opens to the night that Jeremy and Verity met, and Lowen realizes this is an autobiography. So she begins to read it, rationalizing that it's fine because she needs to get into Verity's mind in order to write these books. So that leads us into the first chapter of So Be It, which begins with an author's note saying basically that this is an autobiography, and an autobiography should never encourage the reader to like the author, since no one is likable inside and out, and should instead leave the reader with an uncomfortable distaste for the author, which this autobiography promises to do. And I don't know. I don't really agree with this. I mean, like, yeah, no one's perfect, but I don't think every autobiography should leave you with an uncomfortable taste for the author. It just sounds like maybe she's just really unlikable. She writes in the first part that she can sense her tragic end coming, just like she could sense Chasten's death. Yeah, then we go into how they met, and it says, and judging by the look of Jeremy Crawford, I was going to leave that party an overachiever. He looked rich, and it was a charity event after all. Poor people don't show up to charity events unless they're serving the rich. Present company not included. So yeah, she already sounds like gold digger probably and not a great person. And then we get this really good anecdote about the dress she was wearing. She says it was a fuckable dress, the kind of dress a man can easily bypass when he wants between your legs. The mistake women make when they choose their clothes for events like the one I was at is that they don't think about them from a man's perspective. A woman wants her breasts to look good, her figure to be hugged, even if that means sacrificing comfort and wearing something impossible to remove. But when men look at dresses, they are admiring the way it hugs the hips, or the cinch at the waist, or the fancy tie up the back. They're sizing up how easy it will be to remove. Will he be able to slip his hand up her thigh when they're seated next to each other at a table? Will he be able to fuck her in a car without the awkward mess of zippers and spanks? Will he be able to fuck her in the bathroom without having to remove her clothes completely? The answer to my stolen red dress were yes, yes, and hell yes. Yeah, okay, pick me, choose me, love me, we get it. I personally have never picked out something to wear to gain men's approval. I don't know. This whole passage gave me the ick and was just like we should only dress for men and what they're attracted to. So I guess at this point she has already accomplished her goal of making the reader come away with the book for distaste from the author, because I was like, girl, I don't like you. Yeah, they've never met, but they're at this charity event and she's at the bar, and Jeremy comes up and tells the bartender to only serve Verity water from now on. And she's like, I don't even know this guy. I can get a drink if I want to. He explains that he wants her to drink water so that when he asks her to leave with him, she will make the choice sober. Just kind of an icky line, I don't know, but it works on her because she orders water, they talk, and eventually end up in a limousine, except it's not his limo, he just snuck them into, like, a random limousine. He says he is an entry-level scrub who drives a Honda Civic. Very surprised she still wants to hook up with him even though he isn't rich. Like, wow, how giving of her. She's doing charity at this charity event. They start hooking up, but the driver of the car comes in and interrupts them, so they run to his car. They kiss outside his car, and then he takes her to Steak and Shake. Nice, romantic. And then they go back to his place and hook up, and she doesn't leave his apartment for 3 days. She is already obsessed with him. She's ends the chapter by saying, I needed to please him. I needed to be what made him smile, breathe, wake up in the mornings. And for a while I was. He loved me more than he loved anything or anyone. I was his sole reason for living. Until he discovered the one thing that meant more to him than I did. Dun dun dun. Lowen reads that, which I mean, like, does she really have to read everything about Verity in order to finish her book series? It seems to me she should be reading the book series and making notes on the characters and the plot and trying to get a plan from there. But girl hasn't even read past the second book in the series yet. She's just read the first. So anyway, that leads us to chapter 5. So she reads the manuscript or the first chapter, and then she leaves the office to grab food, and she hears Verity's bed creaking, and she thinks that it sounds like the sound a bed would make if a man were on top of a woman. So she assumes Jeremy is raping Verity, but then he comes up behind her in the hallway and tells her that the hospital bed is on a timer to lift different parts of the mattress every 2 hours to take pressure off her pressure points. So, yeah, luckily, none of that happening, but kind of a weird first assumption to make. So he asks her if she's hungry because he's reheating pizza, and she agrees, but she thinks to herself, I hate pizza? Who the heck hates pizza? This makes me dislike her already, honestly. That's crazy. She remembers what Verity wrote about them getting freaky while she was waiting for Jeremy to heat up her pizza. So she's like drooling over his hands now and like just drooling all over him. She asks like how long it's been since Verity has written, and he says before her car wreck it had been a while since she had written anything or even talked about writing. And she asks how long ago was her wreck, and he says not long after Harper died. She was in a medically induced coma for a while, then went into an intense rehabilitation center for several weeks. She's only been home for a few weeks now. So she asks him how him and Verity met to try to glean if the manuscript she found was true. And his story lines up with what Verity wrote. So she assumes the manuscript is true. And she's also trying to suss out if he had anything to do with the kid's death or Verity's accident. They're talking, and she's like all staring at him, and they make eye contact, and she says his stare felt like it was going far past my eyes into my thoughts. Even though he doesn't mean for it to, it feels intimate. When Jeremy's eyes are on mine, it feels like an exploration of the deepest parts of me. Okay, girl, like, get a towel under you. Chill. Yeah, she's like, she's already in love with him, apparently. He calls her low, and she likes this. But yeah, then we go into the next chapter of So Be It, chapter 2. Verity is talking about how much she likes Jeremy. She says, I was taken by him. That is something Colleen Hoover does a lot. She puts a period between every word in a sentence that she's trying to like get the point across in. Annoying. She goes on to say, addicted to him. I'm not sure it was healthy, how codependent I was, still am really. But when a person finds someone who makes all the negativity in their life disappear, it's hard not to feed off that person. I fed off Jeremy in order to keep my soul alive. It was starving and shriveled before I met him, but being in his presence nourished me. Sometimes I felt if I didn't have him, I couldn't function. So yeah, she's head over heels. Can't function without him, apparently. Skip to them getting intimate yet again, and while they're in the middle of it, he asks her to break her lease and move in, and she reveals that she actually broke her lease 2 months ago, so they technically already live together. Jeremy's blindsided by this and upset that she didn't tell him, though she lies and says she thought she did tell him. Mind you, at this point, they've already been together for 2 years, so I don't know how she would like never leave his house and he for 2 months at least, and he wouldn't ask her, like, you still got that apartment? He's a little angry, but she distracts him by jumping him again. It goes on to talk about how they were living together, but he was temporarily sorry, I can't speak, or I'm talking too much. But he was temporarily transferred to LA, so he was gone. She says you can't take away someone's only means of survival and expect them to function on their own. That's how I felt anyway. Like the only nourishment for my soul had been ripped from me. Sure, I got small bouts of replenishment when he'd call me or video chat with me, but those nights alone in our bed were grueling. Sometimes I would straddle my pillow and bite down on the headboard while I touched myself, pretending he was beneath me. But then after I came, I'd fall back onto an empty bed and stare up at the ceiling, wondering how I'd survived all the years of my life that he hadn't been part of. And girl, I'm just wondering, are your teeth okay? Biting straight into a wooden headboard sounds terrible to me. I like cringe thinking about that. Ooh.
Ouch, baby. Very ouch.
Yeah, during this time is when she starts writing because she needs something to distract herself. And she writes about a fictional Jeremy called Lane. And by the time he comes back after a few months, she has already finished the first novel. Yeah, he comes home from being in LA for a few months. I don't know why real estate would make him transfer to LA for a few months, but I don't know anything about real estate, so I don't know. He comes home and she gives him a little welcome gift that I'm gonna skip over because, as you can imagine, it's not exactly appropriate and honestly TMI. But anyway, she's cleaning up in the bathroom after giving him his welcome gift, and she finds him reading her manuscript, and she tries to take it from him, but he runs into the bathroom and locks the door. And after like 30 minutes, he tells her it's good. And after that, she's like, okay, you think it's good, you can read it. So she lets him read it, which he does in 2 hours, by the way. Like, what is it, a novella? How'd he read that in 2 hours? Anyway, he initiates her while telling her that her writing is going to make her famous, and then he asks her to marry him in the middle of, you know, um, I'm all for an intimate proposal, but I think we could have been a bit more romantic in this case. You would argue, oh, maybe it's heat of the moment. No, no, because he has a ring, and when she says yes to marrying him, he slips the ring on her finger. Yeah, so he had time to plan a romantic proposal, but no. They got engaged, and she says, for 2 months, we looked back on that night as the night we got engaged. For 2 months, I would grin every time I looked at my ring. For 2 months, I would tear up when I thought about what our wedding would be like, what our wedding night would be like, and then the night we got engaged became the night we conceived. Dun dun dun. And here is where it gets real, the guts of my autobiography. This is the point when other authors would paint themselves in a better light, rather than throw themselves into an x-ray machine. But there is no light where we're going. This is your final warning. Darkness ahead. So very emo. That leads us into chapter 6. Lowen is working in Verity's office, and she can see Verity in her wheelchair with the nurse sitting on the front porch through the windows in the office, and she's like feeling very empathetic for her, but finds it hard to concentrate while seeing her. She thinks the clever and talented Verity is no longer in there. Was her body the only thing that survived that wreck? It's as if she were an egg, cracked open and poured out, and all that's left are the tiny fragments of hard shell. I glance back down at the desk and try to focus. I can't help but wonder how Jeremy is handling all of this. He's a concrete pillar on the outside, but the inside he has to be hollow. It's disappointing knowing that this is his life now, caring for an eggshell with no yolk. That was harsh. Yeah, girl. That was harsh. Ooh. So yeah, she thinks it would be better for everyone if Verity hadn't survived and prays that she isn't in there mentally for her own good. But she looks out the window again, and Verity is staring straight at her, which makes Sloane jump and feel threatened. And she's already spooked from this, but then her phone rings, spooking her even more. And it's the apartment that she applied for, calling to let her know that her application was denied because of her recent eviction. And he says he can appeal, but she is understandably very stressed out about this. Jeremy comes into the office and looks at her with empathy because he overheard the whole conversation. And he says he can loan her money until her advance is processed, but she won't accept that. So he offers for her to stay with them until she receives her advance, noting she probably needs the time to go through Verity's notes anyway, and Lowen hesitantly agrees. We skip to Verity is sitting on the outside porch because Jeremy told her she needs to be outside before the sun disappears behind the mountains. So she's reading on the back porch, one of Verity's books, and she's ogling Jeremy since he's shirtless while him and crew are tearing old pieces of wood off of their fishing dock. She's like, I wonder if I need to view him as inspiration for the rest of the series, since he was Verity's inspiration. But I think she's just trying to excuse the fact that she's lusting after him. She then sees Crew waving, and she thinks that he's waving at her, but turns out he is waving to Verity in Verity's room. She looks up at Verity's room, and the curtain shuts right as she looks up at it, and she goes, I'm seeing things, but why was he waving at her window if she wasn't there? Why was he waving? It doesn't make that was very repetitive reading that out loud. Doesn't make sense. If she was looking out her window, Crew would have had a much bigger reaction, considering she hasn't been able to speak or walk on her own since her wreck. Or maybe he doesn't understand that his mother walking to her window would be a miracle. He's only 5. That happens, and she goes up to Verity's room to check if she is moving around, but she finds her still laying on the bed and notices that there's a fan rotating around and it's blowing the curtain open. So she's like, "Oh, okay, it was just the fan." But then she notices that the TV isn't on, even though the nurse told her that she turned it on before she left. So that kind of unnerves her more, and she's like, "Oh, I need to calm down. So I'm gonna go read another chapter of Verity's autobiography." So that leads us into chapter 3 of So Be It. It opens with saying, I knew I was pregnant because my breasts looked better than they had ever looked. I'm very aware of my body, what goes into it, how to nourish it, how to keep it toned. Growing up, watching my mother's waistline expand with her laziness, I work out daily, sometimes twice a day. Like, damn, it's kind of harsh, girl. Yeah, she goes on this whole spiel about how the body is made up of 2 parts, the conscience and the intangible parts. She says, it's very simple, really. Take care of your physical being, feed it with what it needs, not what the conscious tells you it wants. Giving into cravings of the mind that ultimately hurt the body is like a weak parent giving into her child. Oh, you had a bad day? Do you want an entire box of cookies? Okay, sweetie, eat it and drink the soda while you're at it. Caring for your body is no different from caring for a child. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it sucks. Sometimes you just want to give in, but if you do, you'll pay for the consequences 18 years down the road. It's fitting when it comes to my mother. She cared for me like she cared for her body. Very little. Sometimes I wonder if she's still fat, if she's still neglecting that machine. I wouldn't know. I haven't spoken to her in years.
That's where you're going, fat ass.
So yeah, she's like super fat phobic, but she goes on to say she's not here to discuss her mother. She's here to discuss the first thing her baby ever stole from her, which is Jeremy. She is looking in the mirror herself and disgusted that she started showing, and she's thinking about how she wants to deliver early because most of the damage was done in the last trimester, apparently. Jeremy tells her she's never looked more beautiful. She assumes he's lying. She keeps calling her baby bump a pooch, which is, I don't know, it's just funny to me. And, I get it. Like, as someone who is afraid of pregnancy changing their body, like, if I do one day have children. Like, I get it. I can't even fault her for, like, being insecure about her body changing, but purposefully trying to think of ways to deliver her baby early is it's kinda crazy. She notes that Jeremy is super attentive during her pregnancy, and she thinks that he is obsessed with her pregnancy as she is with him. And then they find out that she's having twins, which is not good news for her. She says, I was quiet when we left the doctor's office that day. I had already feared becoming the mother of one baby, being forced to love the one thing Jeremy loved more than me. But when I found out there were two and that they were girls, I was suddenly not okay with being the third most important thing in Jeremy's life. I shuddered daily at the thought of them both growing inside me, stretching my skin, ruining my breast, my stomach, and God forbid the temple between my legs where Jeremy worships nightly. So so yeah, she's like just really worried about damage that twins will do to her body, which like that's a valid concern. She goes a little extreme with it though because during the fourth month of her pregnancy, she starts hoping for a miscarriage, and like I'm like maybe you should have just gotten an abortion in the first place if possible. Don't even like get me started about how abortion access is being denied all around the US right now. That's a whole other topic. But anyway, she's trying to purposefully abort this baby. So she starts taking sleeping pills, drinking wine, and doing anything she can to destroy the things that were going to push him away from me. So Jeremy, they're talking, and he tells her that he loves the babies more than anything, and she asks, "More than me?" And he says, "Different from you." And he admits that his love for them is more intense than it is for her, and he assumes she feels the same way. And he says, "Don't feel guilty. I want you to love them more than you love me. Our love for each other is conditional. Our love for them isn't. My love for you is unconditional," I said. He smiled. "No, it isn't. I could do things you would never forgive me for, but you'll always forgive your children." He was wrong. I didn't forgive them for existing. I didn't forgive them for forcing him to put me third. I didn't forgive them for taking the night we got engaged away from us. Very dramatic. Yeah, after that, she goes into the bathroom and she tries to abort the babies with a wire hanger. Yeah, very chill person here. But, that's how that chapter ends, and we move on to chapter 7. So Lone had just read this, and she drops pages of the manuscript and thinks this is all true without a doubt because a mother would never write this about her daughters if it weren't the truth. She starts thinking that maybe Verity killed them, considering she did try to abort them, and she decides she will destroy the manuscript before she leaves their home because she never wants Jeremy to see it. After reading that, she's like, I need a drink. So she goes down to the kitchen. She's like searching all over for alcohol. Jeremy asks if she's okay. And she finally notices that he was sitting in the dining room this whole time while she was searching for alcohol. But he makes her a drink, and she tells him that there was a part in his wife's books that scared her. And Jeremy is doubtful that she is shaken up considering that she writes in the same genre as Verity. But she asks him if Verity could ever make a full recovery, and he says the doctor is doubtful she will ever walk or talk again. Then Crew comes downstairs while they're discussing Verity's health, and Lowen thinks there is no way she would have agreed to having another child after she read how much Verity despised her twins during pregnancy. She assumes this means that she eventually bonded with her kids, and her mind is making this like all more than it actually is. She is looking at the family photos on their wall, and she notices that one of the twins has a scar on her cheek, and asks Jeremy which one that is, and he says Chasten, and the other is Harper. He says Chasten was born with the scar, and Lowen wonders if it was the result of Verity's failed abortion attempt. She asks if both the girls had the same allergy, and he says only Chasten was allergic to peanuts. He then notices a scar on Lowen's hand and asks how she got it, and she lies and says she can't remember, and she leaves to go shower and is like pressed against the door thinking about Jeremy and how she understands how Verity could become addicted to him, this boring ass guy. And when she pushes off the door, something pulls her hair and she falls back against it. She notices it got stuck in a lock, which Jeremy must have just installed that day, which is not alarming to her because she asked for a lock on the door. She wanted it to protect them from her sleepwalking and things back 2 years ago when she thought she locked the door before she went to bed, but ended up sleepwalking and woke up with a broken wrist and covered in blood. And that's chapter 7. Going to chapter 8, she notes that there's a different nurse today. Her name is Myrna. She's a little older than April, round and cheerful with 2 rosy spots on her cheeks that make her look like an old-fashioned Cupid doll. Right off the bat, she's a lot more pleasant than April, and honestly, it's not that April is unpleasant, but I get the vibe that she doesn't trust me around Jeremy or Jeremy around me. I'm not sure why she dislikes my presence, but I can see how being protective of her patient would mean judging another woman who is staying in her invalid patient's home. I'm sure she thinks Jeremy and I lock ourselves in the master bedroom together after she leaves every evening. I wish she were right. Girl, wipe the drool off your chin. But yeah, at this point, she's read 2 more of the books in Verity's series, so apparently she can read that fast, but she can only read like a chapter of that manuscript at a time. She's getting a feel for the direction that she needs to go with the series. She gets a text from Corey saying that Phantom announced her as co-author of Verity series, and as she's getting that text and about to look at it, Jeremy knocks and asks if she needs anything from Target, and she just asks to go with him because she needs tampons, and she's too embarrassed to ask him for tampons. And while they are driving to Target, he asks her if she's seen Phantom's press release. So she reads it. It's a really simple statement stating that Laura Chase, her pen name, is going to be the co-author, but the comments on it are pretty negative. Like, most of them are wondering who the heck Laura Chase is, which is the problem with, I guess, writing under a pen name for the first time when co-writing something. So they get to the store and Jeremy grabs her hand to help her out of the Jeep, and she wonders if he feels the same attraction towards her, and then wonders if he misses sex, and especially since their marriage seemed to revolve around in the manuscript. But anyway, they go in the store. She goes off to grab her tampons and a few other things, and she makes her way back to Jeremy. Finds 2 women talking to him, and they seem to glare at her and seem to be kind of drooling over Jeremy. They ask her who she is, and Jeremy tells them she's there working with Verity. They're pretty rude. He tries to end the conversation. They say, "Tell Verity I said hello and we hope she's recovering well. I'll share the message," Jeremy says, walking past her. "Give my best to Sherman." Patricia makes a face. "My husband's name is William." Jeremy nods once. "Oh, that's right. I get them confused." I hear Patricia scoff as we walk away. When we make it to the next aisle, I say, who is Sherman? The guy she fucks behind her husband's back. So this is pretty petty. I kind of like that part, honestly. So does Lowen, and she notes that she is falling for him when he has more baggage than her. So yeah, that's chapter 8. Going to chapter 9. She hears a scream from Verity's room and finds Crew on the floor holding his chin with blood on his hands and a knife next to him. He tells her mommy says I'm not supposed to touch her knife. She asks him if his mommy talks to him. He shakes his head, and Jeremy comes running up the stairs. Lowen tells Jeremy she thinks Crew cut himself with the knife, but Crew says he didn't have a knife. He just fell off the bed. Lowen's like, "I saw a knife on the floor," and assumed that's what happened. As they're cleaning up him in the bathroom, she goes back out there to find the knife. No knife. As she's looking for it, she sees Verity staring at her head in a completely different position than before. And she goes back in the bathroom and she tells Jeremy she couldn't find it. He looks for it, he can't find it, and she goes back to her office and starts thinking about how Verity writes from the villain's point of view so well, and decides because she is the villain and evil is all she knows. And then she goes to read another chapter of the autobiography. The autobiography opens with Verity saying all of her abortion attempts failed. She even tried falling down the stairs. This is presumably what causes the scar on Chasten's cheek, or she thinks. Jeremy was worried that the scar was something more serious, but the doctors assure him that both of the girls are perfectly healthy after she gives birth to them. So she's holding her baby and smiles down at her. Not because I felt like smiling, but because it's probably what I was supposed to do. I didn't want Jeremy to think I wasn't in love with her like he was. I took her hand and wrapped it around my pinky. Chasten, I whispered, you can have the better name since your sister was mean to you. Chasten, Jeremy said, I love it. And Harper, I said Chasten Harper. So Chasten apparently is a better name than Harper. Highly disagree. Chasten begins crying, and Jeremy says she's probably hungry. And Verity's like, well, I'm not breastfeeding, but the nurse and him encourage her. And she sees how disappointed Jeremy is, so she tries. She says it feels wrong that the infant is sucking on something Jeremy sucked on before. Girl. Okay. She's repulsed by it, and she tells him that she can't do the breastfeeding, so they're gonna do formula. She's already incredibly jealous of his love for them, saying it's worse than she could have imagined, and she hates that Jeremy is crying like happy tears over them being born. So that leads us to chapter 10. Lowen has just read the chapter and it made her super angry, and she wonders if it's normal for mothers to have those thoughts or if Verity just didn't deserve to be a mother. And she's thinking about how she might want to be a mother, but she'll be 32 soon, so she'll worried she'll never get the opportunity. And she's like, "Ugh, if I had a baby, I'd want it to be with someone like Jeremy." And then she gushes over what a good dad he is. We don't really get much evidence of him being like a super good dad. He's fine, but like not anything above what I would expect, you know? She continues to justify her snooping and reading this manuscript, saying it's research. Then she pulls out a box of photos she found and brings them out to the kitchen table, mind you, and looks through them. And Jeremy sees this, and she tells him that she feels like she's getting to know Verity and get into her headspace by looking at the photos. And she asks him why Harper never seemed to smile in any of the photos, and he said that she had Asperger's and wasn't very expressive. My brother has Asperger's, or I don't think they call it that anymore, but I don't think that's true for him. But everyone's different. Anyway, he tells her what the girls were like and then says that Crew never asks about them now. And he was put in therapy for a bit, but he stopped because Jeremy worried about him being reminded weekly about the tragedy. And he admits that after losing both the girls, when Verity's accident happened, all he had left to feel was anger, and he was angry at Verity. So Lowen assumes that he thinks that Verity hit the tree on purpose. She hugs him, and it seems like they're about to kiss already. She's been there for like 3 days. Go chill. Yeah, seems like they're about to kiss, and Crew walks in. He's like looking at them funny, but then he sees the pictures and he starts angrily slamming them all back into the box, and he's crying and telling Jeremy to put them back, that he doesn't want to see them. Lowen's like, maybe I shouldn't have brought the pictures out and looked at them in front of a still grieving family. And yeah,
Yeah, no shit.
no, duh, girl. Like, at minimum, you should have asked to even look at the pictures, let alone bring them out and look at them and like openly in front of the family. Kind of insensitive. But anyway, that's the end of chapter 10. We're going to chapter 11. I'm trying to talk fast because I don't want this video to be like 10 hours long. But Lowen is working while Jeremy continues to work on the dock, and she just feels like an unsettling energy in the house. She notes it's worse at night. She heard footsteps the night before that were lighter than Jeremy's but heavier than Crew's. She's thinking about how she's never heard Jeremy speak to Verity and wonders if he still loves her. She's hoping not. She wants him so bad. Then she goes into the kitchen while Nurse April is feeding Verity. She's trying to see if Verity has any physical reaction because she's like, I think this girl can move. I think she's faking this. She starts to ask April about her job, about how long she's been caring for Verity and them. And she notices that April is like directing all her answers back to Verity. And then she asks to speak with Lowen alone for a moment. She tells Lowen that it's not really respectful to discuss people like her as though they aren't right in front of you, and Lone apologizes. April's nice about it. She understands it's like easy to do when a person can't acknowledge you, but that's that. Then Crew runs into the house telling he found a turtle, and he keeps looking at his mom and he's like, Mom, look at it, and not understanding that she can't. Or can she? Owen asks him to see the turtle and tells him they will go outside to find something to put him in. They do, they find a bucket, and while they're putting him in it, Crew says, Daddy said I can't have another turtle because I killed my last turtle. Taken aback a bit, Lowen asks how he killed him, and he says he lost him in the house. She like automatically assumed he had killed, like murdered the turtle, but she suggests to him that they let him go in that case and he can lead them back to his secret turtle family. So they're like letting him go, but then Jeremy comes over. Prue reminds Jeremy that he promised they could go out to eat tonight, saying they used to go out to eat all the time before his sisters died. This comment like makes Jeremy tense up, but he's tells Crew he's right. Go wash up, get ready to go, and we'll go eat. He invites Lowen to come. She agrees, of course, because she wants to spend as much time with Jeremy as she can. She even gussies herself up and puts on makeup and wears her hair down, which, because apparently she always wears it up. At the restaurant, Jeremy tells her she looks really nice. I wrote, if I was Verity, I'd come out of my vegetative state and stab him for that comment. Because how do you tell another woman they look really nice? You're still married. Your wife has been in like a coma vegetative state for like a few weeks, I think. We don't move on that quick, guys. But apparently we do. Back to the house. Crew runs upstairs, but they're still in the garage, and there's like an awkward moment where Jeremy and Lowen, she says it feels like a moment at the end of the date where you don't know whether to kiss or hug, and there's like tension between them, but then Crew like runs down the stairs back to his dad, and they go their separate ways, and she goes back to the office and is flipping through the manuscript trying to find an intimate scene with Jeremy because she's like all into him now, as we could have guessed from the very beginning. So yeah, that leads us into chapter 5 of So Be It. Verity's just talking about how she's overwhelmed caring for the babies, that Jeremy had helped a bunch the first 2 weeks, but he was still a real estate agent at the time and had to go back to work. So when he would go to work, she would put them in their cribs, unplug their monitors, and go back to bed, putting earplugs in to drown out their crying. It was crazy. After 3 days of Jeremy being back at work, I felt like my life was returning to normal. I was getting so much sleep during the day, but before Jeremy would come home, I'd feed them, bathe them, and start on dinner. Every night when he would walk in the door, the babies would be calm from finally being tended to, the smell of the dinner would be coming from the kitchen, and he'd be blown away by how well I was tackling life. So yeah, she is really mistreating the babies. Then she tries to initiate with Jeremy, even though it's only been 4 weeks since she gave birth, and like the doctors against that time. I think they need like 6 weeks or something. Jeremy denies this at first. He's like, no, we can't do anything until we have your doctor's appointment in 2 weeks. But that night she wakes him up with her mouth, I'll say. I don't know how to make it like YouTube appropriate, but they do end up having and he's actually not gentle at all. This chapter of it ends by saying the girls might have taken a lot from us by then, but his desire was the one thing I knew would always be mine. Yeah, I sure hope so. Icky. So on to chapter 12. Lowen just read it, obviously, and she's thinking that Verity must have been a psychopath. Jeremy comes in and asks her to hold the door open while he brings up an old aquarium from the basement because he is gonna let Crew have a turtle while they're down there. The light goes off while they're talking about how Jeremy used to own a real estate firm but stopped when they had Crew since Verity made a ton of money from her books. Back upstairs as well as they can in the dark. And then she goes back to continue working, and when she goes to bed, she puts on one of Jeremy's shirts. Insane. I don't know why his shirts are even in her bedroom. Like, I assume all his clothes would have been moved to the bedroom he stays in now, but I guess not. She puts on his shirt, gets on the bed, faces the headboard, and feels the bite marks from Verity while she touches herself.
You need help.
But she stops when she hears Verity's bed moving and she thinks about how Verity probably deserves to be immobile. So yeah, then we go into chapter 13. Sorry, that's just crazy. She then wakes up in a room with yellow walls and the bed starts moving and she realizes she's in Verity's bed. She gets out of bed and then screams when she sees Verity in it and runs out of the bedroom into Jeremy. He tries to grab her and see what's wrong, but she escapes his grip and runs back to her room. Jeremy comes in and asks her what happened, and she admitted that sometimes she sleepwalks. She's like super upset, so Jeremy hugs her, cheating, and then asks her what she was doing in Verity's room. She says she doesn't know. She woke up in there scared, and he asks if this is why she wanted a lock on her door. And he says, "Oh, I thought it was because you were afraid of me." He goes, "You're okay. It's okay. Sleepwalking is harmless." I shake my head in profound disagreement. No, no, Jeremy, it's not. I hold my hands up to my chest, still clutching my wrist. I've woken up outside before. I've turned on stoves and ovens in my sleep. I blow out a breath. I broke my hand in my sleep and didn't even feel it until I woke up the next morning. So, yeah, that's the apparently really bad thing that happened in her past where she woke up like covered in blood. Honestly, I was expecting it to be a bit more dramatic, like she had like hurt someone or something while sleepwalking, but no. So she's like, I should probably go. I don't want that to happen again. I don't want to scare crew. He tells her, like, no, stay. It's not a big deal. Why are you so scared of yourself? Wrist begins to throb. She looks down at it, tracing the scar over the palm, and goes on to say, I didn't feel what happened to my wrist when it happened. I woke up one morning when I was 10. As soon as I opened my eyes, I felt this intense pain shoot up from my wrist to my shoulder. And then it was like a bright light exploded in my head. I screamed because it hurt so bad. My mother ran into my bedroom, and I remembered lying on the bed in the most pain I'd ever been in. But in that second, I realized my door had been unlocked. I knew I had locked it the night before. I look up from my hand back at Jeremy. I couldn't remember what had happened, but there was blood all over my blanket, my pillow, my mattress, myself, and dirt on my feet, as if I'd been outside during the night. I couldn't even remember ever leaving my room. We had security cameras that monitored the front of the house and several of the rooms inside it. Before my mother checked them, she took me to the hospital because the cut on my hand needed stitches and my wrist needed an x-ray. When we got home later that afternoon, she pulled up the security footage of our front yard. We sat on the couch and watched it. At 3 o'clock that morning, the footage showed me walking outside onto the front porch. I climbed up on the thin porch railing and stood there. That's all I did at first. I just stood there for an hour, Jeremy. We watched the entire hour waiting, hoping to see if the footage was broken because no one should be able to remain balanced for that long. It was unnatural, but I never moved. I never spoke any words, and then I jumped. I must have hurt my wrist in the fall, but in the footage, I showed no reaction. I pushed off the ground with both hands and then walked up the porch steps. You could see the blood already coming from my hand dripping onto the porch, but my expression was dead. I walked straight back to my room and fell asleep. My eyes returned to his. I have no recollection of that. How can I inflict that much pain on myself and not be aware of it? How can I stand on a railing for an entire hour without swaying, not even a little bit? The video frightened me more than the injury did. And yeah, honestly valid. That would spook me a little bit too. But she continues on to tell him that her mom sent her away for a 2-week psych evaluation, and that after she had come back, they moved her to the spare bedroom farther down the hall. Her mom had put 3 locks on her bedroom door. Jeremy tells her he's sorry her mom didn't know how to handle it. Hugs her again, cheating, and then he lays down with her and holds her, saying he won't go back to sleep, but will hold her till she does. This is a stranger. Your wife is upstairs. Oh my god. He assumes she is asleep after an hour and he kisses the side of her head and leaves. Cheating. There's cheating. Like, his wife can't even move or talk, presumably, despite what Lowen thinks. And it just feels grimy that they're like doing this while in the same house as her. don't know. I'd be pissed if I was Verity. That takes us to chapter 14, where Lowen bumps into Jeremy again in the morning, and he asks how she would feel if he put a lock on the outside of her bedroom door. That way he can lock it when she goes to sleep and open it before she wakes up. And she can text or call him if she needs out otherwise. He thinks she will sleep better if she isn't worried about sleepwalking out of the room, and she agrees. Though I would not agree to letting a man I don't know putting a lock on the outside of my door. I don't know, that's just me personally. Nurse April sees them talking and eyes them suspiciously, so Lowen goes back to working and she decides to read one more chapter of the manuscript and then she'll stop. Sure, Jan. So we go to So Be It chapter 6. 6 months after the twins are born, Verity still wishes they didn't exist. She tries for Jeremy, but she feels like an outsider in her own family. She has a nightmare that night of the girls being like 8 or 9 and Harper covering Chasten's head with a pillow. And when she pulls Harper off, there's nothing there. Chasten's face is smooth with no scars, no eyes, no mouth, nothing to smother. She asks Harper what she did, and then she wakes up. She realizes that she felt heartache during the dream when she thought that Chasten was dead and thinks maybe she has finally connected to them, or at least to Chasten. Jeremy wakes up while she's having this nightmare and asks if she's okay. And not wanting to admit that she has never felt love for one of the kids until now, she distracts him with, can you guess it? Yeah, and we get another scene of them getting it on, and it's really getting repetitive. I'm bored. Except this time, she asks him how many women have sucked his stick, we'll say. And he asks if she's serious, and he admits it's probably around like 20. And Verity finds it strange that this doesn't make her jealous, but her own daughters do. And yeah, the girl, that's weird as fuck. I'm just gonna say that. Yeah, they continue getting it on until one of the girls is crying on the baby monitor. Jeremy wants to go check on them, but she convinces him to finish before he does. So they do, and then she goes to check on them because she's like suddenly wants to feed Chasten and to hold her and cuddle her. But when she gets to the room, she sees it is Harper crying and she's irritated. She ignores Harper and sits with Chasten in the rocking chair, and she thinks that maybe deep down she knew something was going to happen to Chasten, and that's why she suddenly loved her so much. She says, I knew somewhere inside me I must have been burying the love I had for Harper, saving it for from after my time with Chasten. She's thinking that maybe she has to protect Chasten from Harper, so she sticks her fingers down Harper's throat and begins choking her. Jeremy walks in while she's doing this. He doesn't see, but Harper does puke on her. So yeah, they go back to bed and he plugs the monitor back in, and she realizes then that like if the monitor was on, he could have seen what she was doing, and she can't be that careless. So we go to chapter 15. Guys, 10 more chapters left. We can do it. So Lowen goes on to read a little bit, finally reading more than one chapter at once. And she says, in the subsequent chapters, Verity focused mainly on Jeremy and Chasten, rarely mentioning Harper at all, which grew more disturbing with each paragraph. She talked about the day Chasten turned 1, and she talked about when Chasten spent the night at Jeremy's mother's house for the first time at the age of 2. Everything that had initially been the twins in the manuscript eventually dwindled down to just Chasten. If I didn't know any better, I would think something had happened to Harper long before it did. It wasn't until the girls were 3 that she wrote about both of them again. But as soon as I start the chapter, there's a sharp rapping on the office door. So it's Jeremy, obviously, because he always is coming into the office. He's letting her know that he made tacos, which she requested, but that dinner was 3 hours ago, and she's been in there for 12 hours. So he's like, you need to take a break, girl. And there's a meteor shower tonight. Come watch it with me. I made you a margarita. So yeah, she goes and eats, and then they end up laying on the grass together watching the meteor shower. Me, if I was Verity. Anyway, they're talking. She learns he was raised on an alpaca farm and that he does want to go back to work, but it doesn't feel like the right time with crew ever. She asks about Verity's parents, and he tells her they cut Verity out of their lives. They were super insanely religious and didn't like that she threw thriller novels. It was satanic. So we finally know she writes thrillers for sure. Oh my god, I can't speak anymore. Owen finds this unbelievable that they said her writing thriller novels was satanic, but I believe this. I have had a girl, younger than me, mind you, tell me that the fact that I do yoga and read tarot cards is demonic. I mean, the tarot cards, like, I know lots of religions are kind of against like witchy stuff like that, but yoga? Yoga's demonic. Like they didn't speak to her parents for years, but he did call when Verity had her accident, and the dad answered and he told her about the accident and he said God punishes the wicked, Jeremy. So yeah, very heartless family. He asks Lowen if he should put Crew back in therapy, and she says yes, therapy is the best thing that ever happened to me. Her therapist helped her realize sleepwalking is unrelated to intention. She asks if he really hasn't read any of Verity's books, and he says just the first one because it was hard for him to fathom that it all came from her imagination. It's crazy because he loved the first one. But anyway, she wants to tell him that he has a right to be concerned, but she doesn't want to stain his image of Verity. Verity was upset, though, that he wouldn't read her manuscripts. She wanted his validation. Lowen thinks to herself, because she's obsessed with you, but like honestly, if my partner didn't read my books, especially like this, I am an aspiring author, hopefully to one day be published. And I know how much work writing is, and if my partner didn't want to read my books, I'd be kind of hurt too, honestly. I think it's normal to want your partner's opinion and their approval, but Lowen thinks that it's because Verity's obsessed with him. She asks him when he's going to start building a new dock, and he says he's not. He's just sick of looking at that one. Then she thinks they might kiss again, and says it's time for him to lock her in her bedroom. Yeah. Before he shuts the door, he says, Lo, I lied to you, and admits that Verity never read Lowen's book. He did, and he thought it was phenomenal. He said, your writing matters to me, Lowen. And this gives her the butterflies, obviously. So she starts reading. So be it chapter 9. Verity's talking about how Jeremy has been upset with her lately. He was mad when she put the kids in daycare, but like something else was bothering him because he eventually accepted that daycare was like a good option, whatever. Convinced that whatever has him irritated could be fixed by her making good dumplings and sleeping with him. But he's all angry while they eat and is basically ignoring her, so she tells him to be a man and tell her what his problem is. He reacts by slapping his bowl, sending it crashing into the dining room wall. She follows after him after he storms off into the bedroom and tells her that she only ever talks about Chasten, not Harper. He's tried keeping his mouth shut about it, but Harper's going to start noticing as they get older. She steps forward to him. She says, baby, it's not like that. It's not that I like Chasten more. She's just smarter than Harper, so she accomplishes things first. He spins around angrier than before I even opened my mouth. Chasten isn't smarter than Harper. They're different, but Harper is very intelligent. I know that, I said, taking another step toward him. I kept my voice low, sweet, unoffended. That's not what I meant. I meant it's easier for me to have a reaction to what Chasten does because Chasten likes that. She's animated like me. Harper isn't. I give her a silent affirmation. I don't make a show of it. She's like you in that way. I don't push Harper when she is in those moods. So yes, I do talk about Chasten more. Sometimes I focus on her more, but only because I realize they're two different children with two different sets of needs. Have to be two different mothers to each of them, is her like excuse for only ever talking about Chasten. I think that's a bad excuse, but he kind of accepts it and but says that treating them differently probably isn't the right thing to do anymore and that he's worried about Harper. And Verity tells him that she didn't want to tell him this before because she didn't want him to worry, but one of the daycare teachers thinks they should have Harper tested for Asperger's. And he's like, oh no, and he's looking up autism on his phone, but she tells him not to. He'll worry himself sick until they have an appointment. She lies that she already made an appointment, but she didn't. He then apologizes for his outburst, admitting that work has been shitty, and she tells him he doesn't have to work anymore. And he goes, I would go insane if I didn't work. Maybe so, but it's going to be really expensive putting 3 kids through daycare. We can afford. He paused, pulling back. Did you say 3? I nodded. I was lying, of course, but I wanted the mood of the night to disappear. I wanted him to be happy, and he was so happy after I told him I was pregnant again. So yeah, she lies about being pregnant. She's real crazy. And they have again because we cannot go a chapter without them having. And look, I'm no prude. It's just really boring in this book, and it's like, is this a thriller or is this erotica? I don't know. She's thinking if she doesn't get pregnant that week, she'll just fake a miscarriage because, yeah, that's not fucked up at all. That leads us to chapter 16, where Lowen actually agrees with me. She opens the chapter with her saying it's been another week of her reading Verity's manuscript, and I'm finding it repetitive, chapter after chapter of detailed with Jeremy, very little to do with her children. She wrote 2 paragraphs about Crue's birth, but then went on to talk about the first time they were able to after Crue was born. But she also starts getting jealous reading about them sleeping together because she wants Jeremy. She's also burnt out from working the past 2 weeks, so she goes to watch TV in the living room. She like keeps looking up at the stairs for Jeremy, but apparently they've been like avoiding each other since their almost kiss. He eventually does come down the stairs and joins her on the couch, and she tells him that she's sent the outline in and is waiting to get approved, and she'll probably leave in a couple of days. She's like, "Thank you for letting me stay longer than I should have," and he says he doesn't think it's been long enough. She doesn't ask him what to explain what he means, but starts thinking that he really should move on from Verity. If she was in Verity's predicament, she wouldn't want her husband to feel like he could never move on. I get that, but it's only been like a couple months or something from Verity's accident. Like, I think it's too soon. He starts asking her about herself, starts asking if she's ever been married. She says no. He asks how old she is. She admits her birthday is tomorrow and she will be 32. He doesn't believe her about her age. I don't know if this is because she looks too old or too young to be 32, but she gets her driver's license to prove it to him. And then she gets turned on by him touching the picture of her on her driver's license. So, girl is down bad. He's like, I'm gonna make you a cake because it's your birthday tomorrow. And he puts candles on it and waits till midnight and sings her happy birthday. And she blows out the candles and wishes for him. Dirty dog. He wipes icing off her bottom lip, letting his finger linger. And then he kisses her and even crawls on top of her on the couch. And things progress pretty quickly. There are some clothing removal. He's kissing all over her body. But then she sees Verity at the top of the stairs, who clenches her fists and runs back to her room before Jeremy sees her. He thinks she's upset and stopped kissing him because he's married to Verity, but she says it's not that. She was standing at the top of the stairs. Jeremy's like, she can't walk, but she's like, dude, your wife was watching us. So he runs to Verity's bedroom and sees her under the covers asleep. Lowen's like, I saw her. I swear, I'm sorry. Maybe I haven't been getting enough sleep. But he's like, it's his fault. She's been working for 2 weeks without a break, and it's probably paranoia or guilt. She still thinks she saw Verity, doesn't press it, and asks him to not leave her alone tonight. So they get in bed and cuddle up, and Lone asks if there's a possibility she's faking her injuries. Jeremy tells her he saw the scans, and she wouldn't fake something like this, but Lowen thinks to herself that he doesn't know Verity at all. So we go to chapter 17. She wakes up and is less convinced that she really saw Verity. Jeremy lets her know that he got a lock for Verity's door to help her sleep, and she's debating whether or not to show him the manuscript since she thinks Verity might be faking it, but she decides to read more of it first and skips ahead to a chapter that she thinks might explain Chasten's death, so she skips ahead to So Be It, chapter 13. At this point, they've already had a crew and they have enough money to have a live-in nanny because Verity's books are super successful, and she also travels a lot for book tours and interviews. And she notices that Jeremy gives her tons of attention when she comes back, like as much attention as he gave before the kids came along. So sometimes she lies about being needed in New York and stays in an Airbnb in Chelsea so that she'd get all his attention when he got back. But yeah, everything's going great until one day Jeremy answers a call that Chasten had been found unresponsive in the morning at a friend's sleepover. At the hospital, they tell them to wait in the waiting room, and Jeremy screams and drops to his knees, sobbing because he knows that she is dead. And she says, I'd be embarrassed for him if I wasn't right there with him. And like, girl, how in the world is it embarrassing being brokenhearted over just finding out your child is dead? Anyway, apparently they were like super vigilant about her peanut allergy, but the girls had snuck into a pantry and grabbed a handful of snacks in the middle of the night at the sleepover, and Harper said they didn't realize anything they were eating had peanuts, but the next morning Chasten wouldn't wake up. Verity thinks that Harper killed her on purpose by giving her a snack that had peanuts in it. She goes on to say, I missed Chasten, obviously, and I was saddened by her death, but there was something unpleasant in how hard Jeremy took it. He was devastated, numb. After she'd been dead for 3 months, I was growing impatient. We'd only had sex twice since her death, and he hadn't even kissed me with tongue either time. It's like he was just disconnected from me, using me to get off, to feel better, to get a quick rush of something other than agony. I wanted more than that. I wanted the old Jeremy back. She thinks she had stopped Harper before she killed Chasten, that Jeremy wouldn't be so fucking sad all the time, which is honestly really insane, especially considering he likely would have been just as brokenhearted losing Harper when she tried to kill her before. But anyway, we're going to chapter 18. We're getting close, guys. Lowen comes out of the office to see Verity in the living room, and she tosses a decorative wooden ball to see if she reacts, but she doesn't flinch. So Lowen goes to cook spaghetti for dinner when she realizes she hasn't heard the TV in a few minutes, and she goes back into the living room and the TV is still on but now muted, and she mutters to Verity that she is a fucking and she is so angry that she continues on. She tells Verity that she doesn't deserve the body she's trapped in. She hopes she dies with throat full of vomit the same way she tried to kill Harper. And when she gets no reaction still, she says Jeremy is going to me in your bed tonight. She suddenly smells urine after she says this, but then Jeremy comes in and she tells him that Verity needs to be changed. She thinks that even though she didn't flinch, the fact that she seemed to scare her convinces her that Verity is in there somewhere. After they eat, Jeremy after them because he was cleaning up Verity, he asks her what's wrong, and she's like, it's not my place, and he says, well, now that you said it, that you have to tell me. And she admits that she feels bad for him. He tells her not to. He can't do anything about the situation, and her feeling sorry for him doesn't help. She insists she can help. She tells him there are facilities that will take better care of her. Jeremy appreciates that she thinks he deserves better, tells her to think about it from Verity's point of view. She says that she has been, and Verity wouldn't want him or crew to be a prisoner in their own home. She thinks that he should move out of this house and put Verity in a facility. Jeremy is shaking his head before I even get the sentence out. I can't do that to Crew. He's lost both of his sisters. He can't go through another loss like that. At least if she's here, Crew can still spend time with her. He didn't indicate his own desire to have her here, only Crew's. Take moments, then I tell him. You can put her in a facility part-time so it's not weighing you down. Bring her home on the weekends when Crew is out of school. I walk over to him and take his face in my hands. I want him to see how much I worry for him. Maybe if he sees that someone actually cares about his well-being, he'll take this conversation more seriously. Take moments for yourself, Jeremy. I say quietly, selfish moments. You deserve to live a life where you have moments that have nothing to do with her and everything to do with you and what you want. I feel his teeth clench beneath my palms. He pulls away from me and presses his hands into the granite, dropping his head between his shoulders. What I want? He says quietly. Yes, what do you want? His head falls backward and he laughs once like that was a stupid question. Then he says one word like it's the easiest question he's ever answered. You. Then they start making out. He picks her up and takes her to her bedroom and commands her to take off her clothes. He doesn't have a condom. He's not on birth control, but they decide on a great plan of pulling out. And this will not lead to her being pregnant at all, guys. So yeah, they're sleeping together and she this is very unhinged. She bites down on the headboard right where Verity's teeth marks were.
You are on crack, all right? And not the good kind.
Yeah. That brings us to chapter 19. They get it on all night, basically, and then when they're finally just cuddling, he asks her what her last relationship was like, and she says it was shallow. it only revolved around sex, kind of like his and Verity's relationship. She admits it was her with her agent Corey who he met, and he says that makes him a bit jealous, as if his wife isn't in the room upstairs while he's. She asks about his and Verity's relationship. And he says, I loved her. She was my wife, but sometimes I wasn't sure we really knew each other. We lived together, but it's as if our worlds weren't connected. I was insanely attracted to her, which I'm sure you don't want to hear, but it's true. Our life was great, but the rest of it, I don't know. It felt like something there was missing in the beginning. But I stayed and I married her and we started our family because I always believed that deeper connection was within reach. I thought I'd wake up one day and look her in the eyes and then it would click, like that mythical puzzle piece had finally snapped into place. It's not lost on me that he mentioned loving her in a past tense, she says. Did you eventually find that connection? No, not like I had hoped, but I've felt something close to it, a fleeting intensity that proved a deeper connection can exist. When was that? Several weeks ago, in a random coffee shop bathroom with a woman who wasn't my wife. And they kiss. I don't know, maybe you shouldn't have married someone that you weren't sure about if you felt like something was missing. They fall asleep and wake up 2 hours later, and Jeremy says he can't be there when Crew wakes up, so he goes to leave the room, but the door is stuck. Lowen's like, it's not stuck, it must be locked from the outside. So he tries everything to open it, but eventually he starts calling for Crew. Lowen thinks that maybe Verity locked it and took Crew out of spite, but now he's yelling at Crew, saying April can't find them together when she gets here. And Lowen's like, that's where his head is at? Which honestly, like, yeah, I'd be astonished too, girl, because what do you mean you care so much about the nurse's opinion? She asks Jeremy if he locked Verity's door last night. He can't remember, and she suggests maybe it was Verity who locked them in. He looks at her with fear and then breaks the window and crawls out and unlocks her door and checks on Crew and Verity, who are both still asleep. And then Nurse April gets there. Lone goes into her office and is determined to finish reading the manuscript. That leads us to So Be It, chapter 14, which starts with, it's easy to remember everything about the morning Harper died because it only happened a few days ago. I remember how she smelled like grease. She hadn't washed her hair in 2 days. What she was wearing, purple leggings, a black shirt, and a knitted sweater. What she was doing, sitting at the table with Crew coloring. The last thing Jeremy said to her that day, I love you, Harper. Chaston had been gone 6 months that day, to the day, which meant I had spent 182 and a half days building resentment for the child responsible. Yeah, so she goes on to say that Jeremy has been sleeping upstairs with Crew, even though she says it's not good for him, but Jeremy doesn't listen. She thinks it's strange how they have one less child for him to focus on, yet somehow that requires more of his focus. And she's upset they've only had sex 4 times since Chaston died. And the worst part is that it doesn't even seem to bother him. And also, apparently, Harper never cried about Chaston's death, but Verity chalks it up to her being guilty instead of, I don't know, like her having autism. Then she says, I know guilt can do that to a person. Maybe guilt is why I'm writing it all down, because Jeremy needs to know this truth. The truth. Someday, somehow, he'll find this, and then he'll realize how much I fucking loved him. Back to the day Harper got what was coming to her. I was standing in the kitchen watching her color. She was showing Crew how to color on top of another color to make a third color. They were laughing. Crew's laugh was understandable, but Harper's inexcusable. I was tired of holding in my anger. Are you even upset that Chaston is dead? Harper lifted her eyes to meet my gaze. She was pretending to be afraid of me. Yes. You haven't even cried, not once. Your twin sister died, and you act like you don't even care. I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. Funny how the kid Jeremy believes can't express emotion can bring on the tears when she's being called out. I do care, Harper said. I miss her. I laughed at her. My laughter brought on the actual tears. She scooted her chair back and ran up to her bedroom. Yeah, so Jeremy hears her crying and asks what's wrong. Verity mimics him to Crew, which makes Crew giggle. But then Jeremy comes out and asks Verity what's wrong. And she lies and said Harper is mad she wouldn't let her play by the lake. Jeremy tells her, well, it is a nice day out, but you should take the kids to the shore. And he's gonna go get groceries, which she offers to switch and do the shopping while he takes them out. But he says she hasn't written in 6 months, doesn't go outside, doesn't play with them. and she asks if he thinks she's depressed. He says he thinks they both are and they need to look out for each other. So she does end up taking the kids to the water, and she also takes the last book she wrote because Jeremy's right and she needs to get back into the writing groove. And Crew is sitting at the edge of the dock with his feet in the canoe. She gives us this wonderful aside that Crew doesn't know it, and maybe he'll find out one day, but he was conceived in that canoe. The week I lied and told Jeremy I was pregnant was the most prolific week I've had to date, but I'm pretty sure it was a canoe that did the trick. It's why I wanted to name him Crew. I wanted a nautical themed name. I miss those days. Oh my god. I honestly, doing it in a canoe sounds very uncomfortable to me, but I don't know. Anyway, she's sitting there daydreaming about Harper dying and thinks, well, if Harper drowns, it won't make Jeremy's grief much worse because he's probably already at full capacity. So she tells Harper they're all going to go into the canoe. She paddles them out to the middle of the lake and whispers to Crew to hold his breath and then flips the canoe. And she starts swimming back to the shore with Crew, leaving Harper behind screaming until eventually she hears nothing. Her first thought is that Jeremy will be thankful she saved Crew at least, and then wonders if he will sleep in the same bed with her that night. Just insane. Crew starts screaming for Harper, asking Verity to go get her, telling her she can't swim. Verity tells him Mommy tried to save her, but then thinks, oh, well, she better make it look like she did try to save her. So she tells Crew to go to the house and call Daddy and tell him that Mommy's trying to save Harper and to call the police. Then she goes back to the lake and quietly calls for Harper, worried she is still alive, even that she might try to pull Verity under. She says, I was aware I needed to be out here when Jeremy showed up. I needed to be crying cold on the verge of hypothermia. Bonus points if I was taken away in an ambulance. So yeah, she worries that Harper swam like under the canoe and is getting air that way, so she checks under there and is relieved when she's not there. So then she starts screaming Harper's name since the police will be there soon. Like she's really playing it up. She's screaming, "My daughter, my baby girl!" And the cops get there and start getting into the water looking for her. And then Jeremy gets there and dives in. She says, I was crying real tears at that point. I was hysterical. I wanted to smile at how appropriately hysterical I was, but I didn't because part of me knew I had messed up. I could see it in Jeremy's face. This one would be even harder for him to recover from than Chasten. I didn't anticipate that. Really, girl? You didn't anticipate that losing another kid would break his heart more? Okay, so yeah, they finally find her after half an hour, and Jeremy is trying to perform CPR on her until the dock begins to cave in and he rolls off the edge with Harper in his arm. And she says, or writes, I wonder if that moment would haunt him, having to catch his dead daughter's body as she fell on top of him in the water. Yeah, a girl, I think that's a safe bet, honestly. He gets out of the water and collapses onto the sand, still holding Harper and repeating, I love you, Harper, over and over. And the paramedics pull her from his hands, and then he leaves without even looking at her. And that brings us to chapter 20. So Lowen is vomiting in the toilet after reading this, wondering if she should tell Jeremy or the police. If they locked her up somewhere, Jeremy would be free of her, she thinks. She takes a Xanax and falls asleep, waking up with Jeremy kissing her. He asks her if she's okay since it is 2 in the afternoon, and she lies and says she's just tired. She asks how he got in here since the door was locked from the inside, and he says through the window. He tells her he checked the lock, and it appears if you slam the door hard enough, it can latch in place, and that's how they got locked in, apparently. She thinks it was probably still Verity. She's wearing his shirt again, and he tells her he likes it and that he's falling for her. And Lone's like, well, you're married and I need to go back to Manhattan. And they're quiet for a few moments, and then he tells her that he called a nursing facility that will take her during the week starting Monday, and she will come home 3 weekends a month. He looks happy, and Lone decides she's not going to do anything about the manuscript. It would make him feel worse. She thinks if Verity's faking her injuries, he will find out and keep her away from Crew. He asks her to stay another week, and she agrees. They do the deed, and he doesn't pull out. They both know what they just did, but don't discuss it, and he leaves out the window again for some reason. She's thinking about how she is falling for him, but because of Verity's words, that he deserves to be with someone that will put her love for his children before anything else. Yet, directly after that thought, she puts a pillow under her hips so that everything he just left inside me doesn't seep out. So basically, like, purposely trying to get pregnant, which is insane. They just started sleeping together. And he's married. Leads us to chapter 21. She fell back asleep. She's dreaming that Crew is 16 and evil for some reason. She wakes up and wonders if keeping the manuscript from him is really the best thing, since Crew did see his mother do very little to save Harper. So she goes into the kitchen and Crew's playing a game, and she asks him if they used to have a canoe and if he remembers being in it with Harper and his mom. He doesn't answer, he just stares. She asks him why the boat tipped over. He says, Mommy said I shouldn't talk to you if you ask me questions about her. And she asks him if she talks to him and if she pretends she can't talk. And after she asks that, Crew bites down on a butter knife that he was licking peanut butter off of, bites down, and it goes between his teeth and his gums. So Lone freaks out and grabs it out of his mouth and calls for Jeremy, tells him he bit the knife, and Jeremy's like, he needs stitches, I'm gonna go to the hospital, can you stay here? Verity can't be alone. So she hesitantly agrees. She rushes into Verity's room to make sure she's in bed, then locks her in the room. And then, because she still feels unsafe, she goes down to the basement because she remembered the baby monitor is down there. But when she gets down there, like, everything's moved around, so she has to search for it. But she does find it. She brings it back into the office and plugs it into Verity's computer. And then she brings the other part to Verity's room and plugs it in the dresser. And she says, when another half an hour goes by, I realize I've resorted to doubting myself again. She would have moved by now, especially since she hasn't even opened her eyes. She didn't see me set up the monitor because her eyes were closed, so she wouldn't even know I was there. But, like, have you thought, like, maybe she heard you walking? I don't know. But yeah, so she's watching the monitor and reading the last chapter of the manuscript. Okay, my camera's dying, so I'm trying to finish this fast. So she's reading chapter 15 of So Be It. It's a few days after Harper's death. The police have questioned her a bunch, and Jeremy won't let Crew out of sight, which I understand, but Verity doesn't. She notes how he questions her more than the police did. He just keeps saying it doesn't make sense, and she asks what doesn't. He asks her why she told Crew to hold his breath. She tries to convince him she said that while they were tipping, not before, but she can tell he doesn't believe her and that he will never hold her again. And that's when she began writing the manuscript. It says, I don't know what happens next. Unlike my prediction of Chasten's murder, I don't know how my life will end. Will it be at the hands of Jeremy, or will it be by my own hand? Or maybe it won't end at all. Maybe Jeremy will wake up tomorrow and see me sleeping next to him. Maybe he'll remember all the good times, all the blowups, all the swallowing. Oh my god. And he'll realize how much more time we'll have to do those things now that we only have one child. Or maybe he'll wake up convinced that Harper's death was not an accident. Maybe he'll report me to the police. Maybe he'll want to see me suffer for what I did to her. If that's the case, so be it. I'll just drive my car into a tree. The end. Go on to chapter 22. No one wonders how Jeremy can still take care of Verity when he suspected her of killing their daughter. Jeremy and Crew get home. Crew got 6 stitches and is knocked out on pain meds. She goes back to the office and drops her coffee and splatters it all over her when she sees that Verity is on the floor on her hands and knees in the baby monitor. And she calls for Jeremy, and Verity tilts her head to the side like she can hear her and crawls back into bed before Lowen can take a picture. She runs into Verity's room and tells her that she isn't getting away with this. She rips the covers off her and grabs her by the ankles, pulling her off the bed until Jeremy stops her. He asks her what the hell is she doing. She insists she saw Verity move and that she is faking it. And so he puts Verity back on the bed properly, then locks the door and grabs Lowen, carrying her to her room as she screams for him not to let Crew stay upstairs alone with Verity. And he starts gathering her things and tells her that he wants her to leave. Lowen tries to tell him that Verity's lying, she's crazy, and Jeremy says that she is helpless, practically brain dead, and that it's impossible. She runs and grabs the manuscript and gives it to him, saying that she has proof. She begs him to at least read the last 2 chapters for his girls. So, chapter 23, Lowen is waiting for Jeremy to finish reading the manuscript, and she hears a crash upstairs, then hears a cry and realizes he has probably read enough to realize Verity is not who he thought she was. She hears a door open and looks at the baby monitor and sees Jeremy standing in Verity's doorway. Tells her if he doesn't answer him, he's going to call the police. After threatening to take her manuscript to the police, she finally opens her eyes. This makes Lowen scream, even though she already thinks that she's alive anyway. Jeremy says, "What the fuck, Verity?" And she says she had to. He hits the wall in anger, and Verity begs him not to hurt her. She will explain everything. Jeremy is shocked. He says, "Don't hurt you. You killed her, Verity." He pulls her off the bed, and they struggle, and he starts choking her. So Lowen runs in the room and tells Jeremy he has to stop. They will know he killed her. She says to think about Crew, how he won't have a father if he does this. He relents and takes his hands off her throat, and she tells Jeremy, "You have to make it look like an accident. Make her vomit. Cover her nose and mouth until she stops breathing. It'll look like she aspirated in her sleep." He does. Every good memory he's ever had with his wife died right along with her tonight. Her confessions ripped him apart, and I can see it in the way he's doubled over now, attempting to process the last hour of his life, the last hour of Verity's life. I slap my hand over my mouth and I just start to cry. I can't believe I just helped him kill her. We just killed her. Yeah, duh. Like, Jeremy carries Lowen to bed and tells her that she died in her sleep. That's the story they're sticking to. And in the morning, he will call the police and tell them he found her like that. And Lowen nods the whole time and he tells her he is sorry and he will be right back. He needs to straighten up the room and hide the manuscript. So we go to chapter 24, which skips to 7 months later. It says, Verity died in her sleep 7 months ago. Crew took it hard, so did Jeremy publicly. I left the morning she died and went back to Manhattan. Jeremy had a lot to deal with that week, and I'm sure it would have been even more suspicious had I stayed in his home following the death of his wife. My outline was approved, as well as the 2 subsequent outlines. I turned in the first draft of the first novel 2 weeks ago. I've requested an extension on the deadline for the next 2 novels. It's going to be hard working on them with a newborn. She hasn't arrived yet. She's not due for another 2.5 months, but I'm confident with Jeremy's help, I'll be able to catch up on any work I fall behind on. He's great with Crew, and he was great with the girls, so I know he'll be great with our baby when she arrives. We were shocked at first, although not surprised. Things like this can happen when you're not careful. You, purposely got pregnant. Come on. I worried how Jeremy would take it, becoming a father again after losing 2 children so close together. But I realized after seeing his excitement that Verity was wrong. Losing 1 child or even 2 doesn't mean you've lost them all. Jeremy's grief over the deaths of his daughters is separate from his joy over the impending birth of a new one. Even after all he's been through, he's still the best man that's ever entered my life. He's patient, attentive, and a much better lover than Verity could have possibly described him to be. After her death, when I had to go back to Manhattan, Jeremy called me every day. I stayed away for 2 weeks until everything began to settle. He asked me to come back. I was there the same night. I've been with him every day since then. We both knew we were rushing things, but it was hard being apart. I think my presence brought him comfort, so we didn't worry about the timing or if our relationship was too much, too soon. In fact, we didn't even discuss it. The definition of our relationship was unspoken. It was organic. We were in love, and that's all that mattered. He decided to sell the house shortly after we found out that I was pregnant. He didn't want to remain in the same town where he and Verity had lived, and honestly, I didn't want to remain in that house with all those terrible memories. We started fresh 3 months ago in North Carolina. With the advance in Verity's life insurance, we were able to pay cash for a home right on the beach in Southport. Every evening, the 3 of us sit on the deck of our new home and watch the waves crash against the shore. We're a family now. We aren't made up of all the members of the family Crew was born into, but I know Jeremy is appreciative that Crew has me in his life, and he'll be a big brother soon. Crew seems to be adjusting well. We did put him in therapy, and Jeremy sometimes worries it'll do more harm than good, but I reassure him of all the good therapy did me as a child. I have faith that Crew will easily forget the bad memories if we give him enough good ones to cover them up with. Oh my god, that was a lot, but basically, yeah, they're together now, pregnant. They go back to his old house for the first time to clear it out before it sells, and they shred everything in Verity's office. Crew says he has to get his stuff out of his mom's floor and comes back with papers in his hands. He says they are pictures he drew for his mom. and that she used to keep them in the floor. So Lone goes upstairs to look in the floor after remembering the knife that disappeared, and she does find it in the floor. And she also finds a picture of girls and an envelope, which is a handwritten letter to Jeremy, which I will read the beginning of to you. Dear Jeremy, I hope it's you who finds this letter. If it isn't you, I hope it'll get to you somehow because I have a lot to say. I want to start off with an apology. I'm sure by the time you read this, I'll have left in the middle of the night with crew. The thought of leaving you alone in the home where we shared so many memories together makes me ache for you. We had such a good life with our children, with each other, but we're chronics. We should have known our heartache wouldn't end with Harper's death. After years of being the perfect wife to you, I never expected this career that I love and devote most of my time to would ultimately be what ended us. Our lives were perfect until we somehow flipped into an alternate dimension the day Chasten died. As much as I tried to forget where it all started to go wrong, I was cursed with this mind that never forgets a single thing. We were in Manhattan having dinner with my editor Amanda. You were wearing that thin gray sweater I loved, blah blah blah. My first novel had just released and I signed the new 2-book deal with Pantom, which is why we were at that dinner. I was discussing my next novel with Amanda, blah blah blah. She didn't know how to keep writing after Chasten's death, basically. Amanda, whoever she is, suggested that she stick to the same formula, but also wanted me to take even more risks with the second book. I told her it was difficult for me to write a voice in my novel that sounds authentic when it wasn't at all how I think in my everyday life. I was worried I wouldn't be able to improve my craft with the next book. She told her to try an exercise she learned in grad school, antagonistic journaling. This would have been a great time for you to be paying attention at that dinner. But you were on your phone, probably reading an ebook that wasn't mine. Blah, blah, blah. She said antagonistic journaling was the best way to improve my craft. She said I needed to get into the mind of an evil character by writing journal entries from my own life. Things that really happened, but to make my inner dialogue in the journal entry be the opposite from what I was actually thinking at the time. She told me to start by writing about the day you and I met. She said I should write down what I was wearing, where we met, and what our conversation was that night. But to make my inner dialogue more sinister than it actually was, it sounded simple, harmless. So she gives him an example of the paragraph above of how she would write it. But yeah, basically it goes on to say that nothing in the manuscript was true. It was never meant to be read. It was supposed to be like from a villain's point of view, much like her books. But the absolute truth is that when she took Harper and crew out on the lake that day, she was trying to play with them, and Harper did cry that day when she said no at first. She never scolded her for her lack of emotions, and it's an insult that Jeremy would believe any of the manuscript. She insists Harper's death was an accident. She saw him get suspicious and ask her all those questions, but she did tell Crew to hold his breath after the canoe already started tipping. She thought Harper would be fine because they had played in the lake so many times before, and she thought she would be swimming right behind them as they got to the dock. But she wasn't. So she searched and searched for her, and she didn't blame Jeremy for suspecting her, thought he would realize how ridiculous his indirect accusation had been. She couldn't sleep and tried to release her guilt through the fake manuscript. She wrote about Chasten and Harper's deaths, even added foreshadowing to the beginning. She said it helped her, though she can't explain why. She never expected him to read it, but the next day she walked into him reading it, and he dragged her by the throat into the bedroom. She passed out and woke up in the passenger seat of her Range Rover with tape on her mouth and realized she was going to make it look like she killed herself by driving into a tree, like she wrote in her manuscript. If he was ever suspected of her death, he would just have to provide the manuscript. But anyway, his plan failed because she lived and was in a medically induced coma for a month, and she pretended to be in a coma for 3 more days after she woke up. But he caught her one day with her eyes open, and he looked so angry, like he would try to kill her again, so she pretended not to be aware of her surroundings. She planned to fake it until she could figure out how to fix the situation. She says, "Don't think it wasn't hard. It was humiliating at times. I wanted to give up, kill myself, kill you. I was so angry at where our lives had ended up. And after all those years of marriage, you could even for 1 second believe any of that manuscript to be true. I mean, seriously, Jeremy, do men really believe women are that obsessed with sex? It was fiction. Of course, I loved making love to you. Most of the time, it was to please you because that's what couples do for each other. It wasn't because I couldn't live without it." I don't know. Then why'd you write so freaking much about it? It wasn't necessary. She goes on to say he was a good husband and still takes care of her, even though he believes she murdered their children, or third daughter. And despite what the manuscript said, his love for the children is what she always cherished most about him. There have been moments she wanted to tell them the truth, but didn't think she could survive a third murder attempt from him, so she was biding her time until she could run away with Crew. She tried to find the printed manuscript so he couldn't use it as evidence when she left, but she couldn't remember where it was. She searched everywhere, which is pretty funny considering Lowen found it like her first day there. She also knew she needed money, so when he left for a meeting in Manhattan, she opened a new checking account and planned to transfer the money from the remaining 3 books into her account and leave with Crew. Except Lowen found the manuscript. She knew she shouldn't have, but she started messing with Lowen, trying to scare her because she had like basically taken over Verity's life. And she wrote this letter while she heard them hooking up, and she locked the master bedroom so she could hide it before before he got back upstairs. She ends it with, "When Crew and I finally get out of here, I'll call you someday and tell you where to find this letter. After you read it, I hope you'll find it in you to forgive me. I hope you'll find it in you to forgive yourself. I don't blame you for what you've done to me. You were a wonderful husband until you couldn't be,
You know, he's a little nuts, but who isn't?
and you are the best father in the world, hands down. I love you, even still. Verity." We go into chapter 25. Lowen drops the letter. She doesn't want to believe anything she just read. She wants to believe that Verity was cruel and deserved what happened to her, what they did to her, and she's shocked that Jeremy already knew about the manuscript, but she realizes he never denied knowing about it. In fact, when she gave it to him, he just asked where she found it. But yeah, she rips the pages into the toilet and flushes the paper while also eating as many pieces of it as she can because she never wants anyone to find the letter because Jeremy would never forgive himself if he read it. Jeremy finds her there and they leave the house, and he's talking about how it's 10 more weeks till they have the baby and he's super excited. And Lowen thinks, "He will never know what I know. I'll make certain of that. I will take this secret to my grave with me so Jeremy doesn't have to. I have no idea what to believe, so why put him through more anguish?" Verity could have written that letter as a way to try and cover her tracks. It could have been another ploy at manipulating the situation and everyone involved. And even if Jeremy really was the reason for her wreck, I can't blame him. He believed Verity maliciously murdered his child. I can't even blame him for ultimately following through with her murder when he found out that she had been deceiving him about her injuries. Any parent in his position would have done the same, should have done the same. We both believed in our hearts that she was a threat to Crew, to us. No matter which way I look at it, it's clear that Verity was a master at manipulating the truth. The only question that remains is, which truth was she manipulating? The end. We're finally through this freaking book. Yeah, so I just have some final thoughts that I wrote down. First of all, why did Lowen read that manuscript so damn slowly? She was like, "A chapter a day is all I can do." Like, mind you, she's an author and took 2 weeks to read 19 chapters. It was honestly infuriating. Like, I feel like we could have avoided a lot of this if you just read the whole thing in the first place. I don't know. Like, she would not stop sticking her nose in Verity's business while actively trying to steal her husband. And I don't know what either of them even found so alluring about Jeremy. He had like no personality. All we know about him is that he was hot and a good dad. Like, he worked in real estate, for crying out loud. How interesting can he be? No offense to real estate agents. I wrote, but I don't know, maybe there are a match made in heaven because Lowen doesn't seem to have much of a personality either, which in fact is a lot of Colleen Hoover's characters have barely any personality. I think she could have done a lot more with both of the characters. I did like how Verity fucked with Lowen the whole time, while also managing to stay in a vegetative state around everyone else. I kind of stand. I probably would have messed with my husband's mistress too, honestly. Um, Actually, I wish we got to see her mess with Lowen more. I think that would have been funny. It would have been like a comedy. So she carried this book, even though she was like pretending to be brain dead for 99% of it. I also hated how the whole time they tried to justify the cheating as if Verity wasn't in the same damn house. Like, poor Crew, too. He just lost his siblings, and his mom was in a car wreck and is presumably brain dead, and his dad starts hooking up with this stranger who just moved in. Like, this kid needs a break. Come on. No wonder he stabbed himself. Probably the most annoying thing I found about this book were the pages and pages of extremely boring scenes that we got. Like, they were super repetitive and honestly, like, unnecessary. And like I said, I'm no prude, but they weren't even done well. I'm just gonna say that. I think half of those scenes at least could have been spent giving Jeremy a personality. Maybe. Have we considered that, Colleen? It's like it doesn't make sense why Verity's so obsessed with him. He's kind of boring. You know what? On second thought, the worst part of this book is how terrible Colleen Hoover is at writing about trauma. We open with Lowen witnessing a man die right in front of her, his blood literally splattering on her. It's just never addressed again. I think there's one mention of it at the very end about all the bad stuff she's seen, but no, it has no effect on her. Also, her mom just dying a week ago from cancer when the book starts has no effect on her like the entire book. I guess it's because we're led to believe her mom was like super terrible to Lowen, but we didn't really even see any of that besides the mention of her like not handling her sleepwalking well. And I don't get if she was so terrible why Lowen would like care for her the last year of her life. If I was Lowen and my mom was terrible, I'd be like, bye bye. Anyway, just it doesn't make much sense. And I think Colleen Hoover has a habit of just using, like I said before, these traumatic events to like add drama to the book, and she doesn't even handle them well. And this is like in all of her books, as I mentioned before, my examples in the beginning of sorry, at this point I've talked so much I've like lost my voice. But the ending sucked. There was this huge lead up to Verity pretending to be like in a vegetative state and psycho, but in the end she didn't act psycho at all. She was like pretty much immediately murdered by Jeremy, and it felt like we led up to this big reveal and then it just fell like so flat. I think so much more could have been done. We could have extended the scene of her revealing that she could actually move and talk. And the plot twist at the end with the letter that makes us not know whether or not Verity did kill her daughter, and if she's actually a bad guy, and if Jeremy in fact was the villain because he murdered her or attempted to murder her 2 times before that too. I just feel like that was like so cliche. Sorry if you can hear my boyfriend. It was so cliche. It just went nowhere, honestly. Like, I also have a hard time believing that after her death, a coroner wouldn't suspect any foul play, considering he did choke her out. Like, she must have had bruising on her neck. But sure, she died choking on her throw up, and no bruising on her neck after Jeremy tried choking her to death originally. For the second time. Yeah, with all that being said, this is still somehow Colleen Hoover's best book. She and her romance books, all her male love interests are really creepy and I hate them all, but I think she could turn them into good antagonists and thrillers, and maybe she should go that route. I mean, it probably would read a lot like Frida McFadden's horror or thriller books, but I already compare them to each other, so honestly, like, girl, I think you missed out on your genre. That's what you should switch to. Yeah, I think it'd be far better than her romance novels. That's my whole review. I know there's a chapter that was added on like after she already published the book. I've read it, but if you guys want me to do like a short video going over that, I'm happy to put myself through it again. And yeah, I hope you liked my rant review. I'd appreciate if you liked and subscribed, and thank you for watching.